And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. College quarterback Shedeur Sanders has been discussed as a potential first overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. His father and coach, Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, says keeping Shedeur upright is the top priority for his team. He took 52 sacks last year, the most of any quarterback in major college football. But Coach Prime said it was easy to recruit a much better offensive line this offseason because the young players know that if they go to Colorado, they're going to get plenty of attention from fans and scouts. Prime, what's on your mind?
Do you feel an obligation with whom you are to perform at a higher level or coach at a higher level?
Yeah, yes, I'm judged on a different scale. My wins are totally different than your wins. Your wins, you just judging football. That's why I have to start out and give you education and academics and so forth. I have to give you those things so you understand there's a greater scope. I can't win 9 games and our GPA suffers. Our GPA can't be high, but we lose another 8 games. We can't not go and grab high school players and you got a bunch of guys in the portal, out of the portal that's getting incarcerated. My wins are different. We have to win in every area. That's the way we're judged. And I'm cool with that because we come a little different.
I already know what the expectation comes with. I know where everybody's Super Bowl.
Cut from a different cloth. Our college football playoff reporter, Heather Dinich, joins us now. Heather, it is always good to see you. Thanks for being with us. Do you agree with Shedeur's comments about Colorado being everyone's Super Bowl as someone who follows college football intimately for many, many years?
Well, look, when he says that, first of all, you saw how he said it, casually, right? But when he's talking about that, if you're an opposing player, you're looking at Colorado as a Super Bowl only through the eyes of someone who perceives some of their comments to be arrogant, right? If you look at KJ Jefferson, who's now the quarterback at UCF, he has a picture of Shedeur Sanders in his locker because there are people who think he's the best quarterback in the country.
Wow.
So this is bulletin board material, right? This is locker room material. Anyone who watches college football knows this isn't a Super Bowl team. This isn't even a Big 12 contending team, right? This is a team that's just trying to win a few football games here. So to me, it's a little bit different when you're talking about the approach as a player or a coach against Colorado. You're just trying to quiet these guys and their attitudes and their swagger.
I don't know how you can be everybody's Super Bowl when you go 1-8 in your final 9 games. You're 4-8 overall. Look, I don't expect anything different from Deion Sanders, from Shedeur Sanders, frankly, from anybody on this team because they're parroting their head coach's mentality and his attitude that if you want to be the best, you have to come across like you believe you're the best. So more power to him. If he wants to put that sort of bulletin board material out there, that's fine. I don't know how many people are actually hanging this up on their proverbial bulletin board as a threat. To me, the bigger issue with Colorado right now is their schedule. And Harry, I'm going to push back on something you said in the first hour when we were talking about this. And they moved to the Big 12, moved back to the Big 12 this year. And some of their opponents, I'm looking at Nebraska on the road, at UCF on the road, at Texas Tech on the road. That's no slouch. I think all 3 of those are losses. And then Utah, a team that had 8 wins last year. Kansas finished in the top 25. Arizona in the top 25 as well. We know that Oklahoma State was their last loss of the season last year. Their schedule does them no favors. I don't know if this is a team that's going to earn bowl eligibility. I think you can set the bar somewhere around 6-7 wins. It won't be easy. The only way to get there, though, is to make sure that Shedeur Sanders, who was pressured on about 40% of his dropbacks last year, is standing more upright than not in 2024.
Well, I think what they don't have to deal with, you don't have to deal with Oregon, right? In which they had to deal with last year in Bo Nix. Now that's going to be Dylan Gabriel. You don't have to deal with a Caleb Williams. So from viewing it from that standpoint, when I'm looking at Colorado, I think it's going to be better for them entering the Big 12. Now, when it comes to a team like Utah and dealing with Kyle Whittingham, they're going to be physical as hell. So if you can't impose your will and you can't be physical along with the Utah Utes, that's definitely going to be a loss. But as far as it, being everyone's Super Bowl when they play Colorado, I want to peel back a little bit, ladies. I want to take this from a different standpoint and a different angle. Who were we talking about the first 6 weeks? What team were we talking about the first 6 weeks of the college football season last year? Was it Alabama? Nope. Was it
Not
Oregon?
in a good way. Technically, we were talking about them,
But my thing is,
we're talking about Colorado. First Take was live from Colorado.
We're talking about Colorado.
Yes.
So from the lens of notoriety, being able to be seen, having the big games, look at the biggest games in college football last year from a viewership standpoint. And I bet you Colorado was on there more than twice. From that standpoint, I view it. Probably not, Colorado being this juggernaut, this powerhouse program.
Yeah.
But from a notoriety standpoint, I view it like that for other teams being able to play Colorado.
But does that stuff matter? Does the notoriety part matter? When you know if you know you're a better team and you know that you can go into their house or they can come into your house and you can still walk away with a win, how does that equate to them being your Super Bowl? If I'm a team like...
Well, you could just be salty that they get more shine than you.
But let me say
even
this,
if
Courtney.
you're the better team.
I don't know, though. I mean, in the era of
NIL,
I feel like that balance of power is a lot more spread across the board, and Colorado's still going to get theirs. They're still going to get national attention. I wouldn't be surprised if you're there for game day at some point.
But here's my thing. When I played in the league, you want to know the first thing I looked at when we had our schedule? What primetime games do we have?
Yeah.
So if I'm a college kid and I know I'm playing Colorado, most times, often than not, we're going to be in primetime television.
Yeah.
So if I'm a guy that's trying to get seen by NFL scouts and prospects, we know they watch the tape, but if I can ball out on national TV in a game that's viewed by a lot of people, so now that buzz start. They talking about Harry. They talking about Jim. They talking about Joe. They talking about hell. I don't know. I'm going to make it rhyme.
When Dion has mentioned that Shedeur Sanders will be like the #1 pick, the 2025 draft, we heard people say they could see him going to the Dallas Cowboys. Wouldn't it be so fitting? Jerry Jones, the whole thing, the Texas connection and that whole deal. ESPN Bet has them winning 5.5 games this year. What does a guy like Shedeur need to do if the win total's not there to be in the Heisman race, to be a top pick when you don't have the win total? What type of performance does he need to have?
Well, he has to have an outstanding performance, but as Courtney mentioned before, he has to stay on his feet. He has to stay healthy. That's #1. But look, here's the other thing. The other teammate, Travis Hunter, is the one who was last year ahead of Shedeur on my Heisman list and probably will be again if the two of them have similar seasons. Because as a Heisman voter, my job is to pick the player who is the most outstanding player in college football. Travis Hunter is a two-way player who played on offense, defense, special teams, over 1,000 snaps, more than any other player in college football, had receiving touchdowns, interceptions. I mean, when we're talking about Shedeur Sanders, we're talking about the wrong guy, in my opinion, as far as the Heisman goes on Colorado's football team. And there are a lot of other talented quarterbacks out there. So he's got to stay healthy, stay on his feet, and he's also got to keep an eye out for the guy in his own locker room who I think could be the best player in college football if he does what he did last year.
And I would say this, it goes back to other opponents wanting to play Colorado. If I know you have two Heisman candidates over there on the opposing team, I'm looking forward to that matchup. I'm looking forward to that game because if I can ball out against those guys, it puts me as a player individually in a different light.
But you cover college football. How talented is Shedeur Sanders?
I like
How can he translate at the next level?
I think there are times where he might hold the football entirely too long, but I like his pocket presence. I like that he can make it every throw on the football field. And here's an intangible that you can't coach. It's called that it factor. When the game's on the line, I look at that first game versus TCU, when he had to make that seam throw to Travis Hunter, the other Heisman candidate, right? Those two guys were able to connect. He can improvise. Now, he's not no Michael Vick or no Lamar Jackson, but he's athletic enough to be able to escape pressure and extend plays. All of these things, and we got to remember who he got training from. He got training from the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Tom Brady. That DNA that his father implanted, Shedeur has it. He has that it factor, in my opinion.
What would you say?
If I'm looking at like Heisman favorites, I think he deserves to be on the preseason list. He's not like my favorite. I think you look at Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, Dylan Gabriel, who, he might have that Bo Nix sort of transition when he transferred into Oregon, and we saw what that did for Bo Nix's college career, what that did for his odds as a Heisman favorite. Shedeur Sanders will be in a top 10 list. For when you ask, like, if you're on a bad team, what do you need to do to
Win.
put yourself in that category.
You got to
Yeah.
win.
Well, look at Jaden Daniels. What cemented him last year as the Heisman favorite? The game against Georgia State. I mean, not to say that LSU was a bad team. I think they had 3 losses, but still 8 touchdowns, a singular performance like that can catapult you over other people into that conversation. So if Shedeur can limit the sacks, and some of that is on him too. You mentioned he holds onto the ball too long oftentimes. Him, Pat Shurmur, that's a collective thing that has to happen in order for him to let his playmakers make plays, in order for this run game to take off as well, in order for this entire offense in Colorado to be more complete than it was last year.
I'll say when I'm looking at the Heisman race coming into the season, I have Carson Beck number 1. You talk about a guy that completed 72% of his passes, 3,900 yards last year, and had single-digit interceptions, and he was on the best team for majority of the year, the Georgia Bulldogs. But also a guy that a lot of people better not sleep on in college football is Dylan Gabriel. He was 9th in passing yards last season, 69% of his passes. He had 30 touchdowns and 6 interceptions and also had 12 rushing touchdowns. The arsenal that he's going to throw to at Oregon, Evan Stewart is coming over from Texas A&M, Tez Johnson is coming back, and you have Trayshawn Holden. So don't be surprised if we see Dylan Gabriel climb up boards a lot more than we see other people throughout this college football
Heather,
season.
if it's not Colorado, which team do you think is everybody's Super Bowl?
Oh, it's always Ohio State. I mean, that is a real, this is our Super Bowl type team. You know, Penn State's got to play them this year. We were talking about them earlier as a possible sleeper team. Oregon, you want to talk about a Heisman showdown there? You got Will Howard, Ohio State, trying to get that offense going. I mean, to me, that's the kind of team that, and everybody knows that Ohio State has one of the most talented teams that it might have on a Ryan Day this year, and they should be contending for the college football playoff. But to go back to what Harry was saying, remember, you mentioned Jackson Dart this morning. Don't forget about him and Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin said this spring that this is the most talented team that he's had, so keep an eye on him for the Heisman as well.
Give me something.